welcome to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and today I'm doing another indie horror spotlight. I have the director in front of us of two indie horror movies that are in pre-production, about to film soon. One is Darbie's Scream House, and the second one is Blood Bitch Baby. I have Mr. Donald Farmer here with us. Donald, thanks for coming on, my friend. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Just staying busy getting ready to shoot these two movies.
Awesome. So tell us first about Blood Bitch Baby.
Well, I'm a big fan of monster killer baby movies. I guess the most famous one is It's Alive, and then Rosemary's Baby's got a big following too, although it sort of cheats the audience because it never really shows you the baby, and the baby doesn't get to go on a killing rampage. So I like the idea. This movie has sort of, from Rosemary's Baby, we have the idea of a demonic baby, but unlike Rosemary's Baby, we do let our baby go on a killing rampage. And so we've got some great creature effects because everybody likes these creature puppets, so that you've got live practical effects and not relying on CGI computer animation. So whenever possible, I try to stay away from the CGI and have live practical effects, and that's what this movie's got.
Awesome. And so in this movie, what do you think the gore level is going to be?
Well, I have Jessie Seltz doing the gore, and she just worked on the Barbara Crampton movie for the Shudder channel called Jacob's Wife. So if you saw Jacob's Wife, the gore in that movie was just insane. So we're really lucky to have Jessie and doing our effects, and she really knows how to bring it. This is my first movie with Jessie, and she's going to also do Darbie's Scream House. So we're doing two movies back to back with Jessie, and because I'm a huge fan of Jacob's Wife, so I couldn't be more excited to have Jessie doing our gore.
A filming location? Are you shooting on the West Coast?
No, we are shooting this entirely in Tennessee.
Tennessee? Wow. Okay.
Because that's where I live. So I have lived on the West Coast before, but the only movie I actually shot on the West Coast was my second movie, Cannibal Hookers, that I did way back in '87. So, I was only living in California for a year, just long enough to do that one movie. And then the only other thing I've ever shot there was this VH1 reality show that I was one of the stars of, and I shot that in 2009. So that's the last time I was back in California working, was to shoot a VH1 reality show. But we've shot a lot of our movies lately in Kentucky, Tennessee, and Georgia. That's my three states, although I have shot all over the world. I've shot in France, I've shot in Russia, I've shot in England, and I've shot in New York City and Miami and all over the place. But lately we like to shoot in Tennessee, Kentucky, or Georgia, those three states, because I've got me a big talent pool here of actors that I use over and over again. And so I like to shoot where I've got a great talent pool.
And that's amazing. And one thing I noticed about your movies, you like to use that old school, gritty exploitation look with the movies. You're not apologetic at all.
No, I love the 80s kind of look. And so we like to cart that out with a lot of color gels. And of course, we have really short shooting schedules. So we try to make the most of our shots. And obviously when you have, I've worked on movies with longer schedules. I think the longest shoots I've worked on I did a couple of movies that had 6-week shoots, and we have 6-week shoots. You have time to just do an insane amount of camera coverage. But when you're shooting movies that are shot in, like my last movie, Debbie Does Demons, was shot in 6 days. So when you're shooting a movie in 6 days, you just have to try to maximize your camera coverage and make sure that what's going on in front of the camera is so interesting that people aren't going to bitch because you're not constantly cutting to another shot every 3 seconds. I know Michael Bay is one of the directors who sort of got people used to this new style of editing where you're just constantly cutting to a new shot every few seconds. But I don't really like that style of editing. I like to show stuff. And also that style of editing requires a huge amount of camera coverage to have enough shots that you can do that kind of editing. So I've worked that way before, but I personally don't like it.
Okay. So you're looking at about a 6-day production.
Yeah, that's what we usually have. We already did our first day. We have a second unit director, and he already did the first day. So Blood Bitch Baby has already got its first day of shooting wrapped. So we've got one down, five to go because our second unit director just knocked off the first day.
Okay. And your second movie, I've seen the posters that look absolutely amazing. Darbie Scream House. Tell us a little bit about that. Did you get any with the big success of Barbie? Did that make you decide to, hey, I'm gonna put my own little turn on it?
Well, whenever there's a huge movie that's just like a box office phenomena, there's always a bunch of horror movies that jump on it and make spoof versions or inspired versions. I mean, it happened with The Exorcist, where after it came out, there were a zillion different exorcism movies. Then after Jaws was a hit, there were tons and tons of shark movies, and there still are to this day. There are still people making shark movies today, nearly 50 years later, all because of the success of Jaws. And, when Alien came out, there were lots of Alien knockoffs like Forbidden World and Galaxy of Terror and Creature with Klaus Kinski. And so the last movie to inspire a whole lot of knockoffs was just a few months ago, Cocaine Bear. There's already, think of how many movies there's been announced since Cocaine Bear that are obviously trying to ride its coattails. There's been probably the most prominent one is Crack-Coon, about the raccoon that gets into some crack. And there's been a Crocodile, about a crocodile that gets into some crack. So there's been quite a few. I think there's been at least a half a dozen I've counted that have come along that just off Cocaine Bear, which only made a tiny fraction of the money that Barbie made. Barbie's made over $1 billion, and Cocaine Bear didn't make that kind of money. But when Barbie came out, it turned out to be the #1 box office hit of 2023. I just wondered when the other shoe was going to drop, and I thought, oh well, whenever there's a movie that's this huge, whenever there's a movie that's just a giant blockbuster like The Exorcist, Jaws, Star Wars, there's always dozens of spoof movies or knockoff movies. And so I was wondering, well, how soon are we going to start seeing all these announcements about Barbie similar movies? And I waited about a week and I didn't see any announcements at all. So I decided, well, damn it, I'm going to do one, but I'll just be the first one. So I just immediately announced that. And then since I've announced my movie, I see one other person has come forward and announced one too. So I don't know if they got the idea from me, but I see that Charles Band has now announced one. His doesn't seem as personally as interesting as mine. He's calling his Barbieheimer, which means you have to have been aware of the fact that Barbie and Oppenheimer were released the same weekend to get the joke. And a year from now, nobody's going to remember that. So by the time his movie comes out, people are not going to remember what his title is spoofing. So, but in my case, everybody has heard the expression Barbie's Dream House. So I thought just calling it Darbie's Scream House was a natural. I didn't even want to use the word Barbie because I thought you would get sued. And so that's another thing. I don't know how Charles Band thinks he can use the actual word Barbie and not be sued by Mattel. I think you have to sort of change it to avoid them trying to shut you down. So I don't know if he's heard from the legal department of Mattel yet, but I would be worried if I was him actually calling
I would too. I would assume
actually calling his movie Barbieheimer. But as long as you make it clear that your movie is a spoof, just like in Mad Magazine, when they change the titles a little bit and make it a spoof, they can get away with it. And so I'm doing something similar to what Mad Magazine does. I'm changing the names to something that rhymes with Barbie. I just went through the whole alphabet to listen to all the names that rhymed with Barbie, and Darbie was the best one. There's not a lot of names that rhyme. There's not a lot of names that rhyme with Barbie.
No.
So Darbie was about my only choice, and the only actress I know that's named Darbie is Kim Darbie, where Darbie is her last name, but at least there is one famous actress named Darbie. So we just decided to go with it and say everybody knows about Barbie's Dream House, so we'll call ours Darbie's Scream House. And even 5 years from now, people are going to get that joke. But I think a year from now, when Charles Band's Barbieheimer comes out, a big chunk of his audience is not going to know. They're not going to get the joke because they're not going to remember that Barbie and Oppenheimer were battling at the box offices. That's sort of like an obscure industry fact that people are not going to remember. So
I'm definitely not. But
so I'm really not too worried about his movie. I think we've got a little more. I think our movie's going to have a longer legs.
I do I've seen some of the advertisement that you're going to have a lot of Barbie's friends in there, like Skipper.
Oh yeah, we are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have Barbie's boyfriend Ben, because we needed a name that rhymed with Ken. And we're going to have Ken's best friend Fallon instead of Alan, and we're going to have Fallon's girlfriend Smidge instead of Midge. So we're getting all these names that rhyme. And then, like in the Barbie movie, there was all these other Barbies that were something that had various names. So we've invented our own sort of Barbie clones to have in this movie. We've got Danger Darbie, who's a karate expert. We've got Rodeo Darbie, who wears a cowboy hat and who knows how to lasso people. And then we've got Ditzy Darbie, who's just like a walking klutz. And then we've also got Ben's got a best friend named Beach Blanket Ben. And he's a guy that just walks around everywhere, no matter where he is. He always walks around in a swimsuit with a towel over his shoulder. So Beach Blanket Ben is going to be one of Ben's best friends. So we've got those as sort of our main characters, and then the whole plot, since it's a horror spoof, a horror comedy, the way the horror comes into it is that Barbie's got on the Barbie doll universe, Barbie has a kid sister named Skipper.
Mm-hmm.
So in our movie, Darbie has a sister named Tripper, who is a blabbermouth, and so Ben gets together with all of Barbie's girlfriends and has secret meetings with them where they're all planning a surprise birthday party for Darbie, and they're thinking how great it's going to be, that Darbie's going to be so thrilled. And so he has a secret meeting with all of Darbie's girlfriends that he doesn't want Darbie to know about, but Skipper eavesdrops on it and sees him sneaking off to meet with all these girlfriends, and so she immediately thinks the worst, and she goes and blabs back to Darbie that your boyfriend Ben is cheating on you with all of your girlfriends at the same time, and she just drives Darbie crazy. So Darbie decides to murder all of her girlfriends in revenge, and so that's how the murder part comes in. It's all because of Tripper is like an idiot blabbermouth and tells her all this gossip that's not even true, and it drives Barbie insane, and so Darbie has to go on a murder spree. And by the time she finds out that they only were innocently planning a birthday party for her, it'll be too late.
And like all of your movies, I'm assuming that there's going to be lots of tits and ass in this movie.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have that. We don't want to disappoint our fans. And then also, one thing I didn't really like about the Barbie movie was in the Barbie movie, they implied that all the Barbie dolls live in this city where all the dream houses are. And then simultaneously, all the Barbie dolls are in a child's home where they're being played with. So it was like, according to the rules of the Barbie movie, every doll is in two places at the same time. They're in the town, and then they're also in some little girl's bedroom. And I thought that was a little way too confusing and idiotic. So I made ours a lot simpler. I decided to make ours more like Toy Story, where we've got a little girl that owns all these dolls, and every time she turns her back, they all come to life. And so I'm doing it more like that, where the little girl has all these dolls, the Darbie doll, the Tripper doll, the Ben doll. She has all these dolls in her house, and they all look like dolls until when she turns her back, they all come to life, and then we have them played by the actors.
Nice.
I decided that made more sense because I did think the way they did it in the Barbie movie was just a little too convoluted, trying to make us believe every doll is existing in two places simultaneously.
Yeah. That does make more sense of going the Toy Story route.
Yeah, so I decided to borrow that from Toy Story. I thought Toy Story had a better idea.
So, funny wise, I understand you do have an Indiegogo active right now.
Who?
You have a crowdfunding Indiegogo going on right now?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's got about 13 or 14 more days to go. And so we're using that to raise our base money, and then we've already got a guaranteed sum of money that's like twice what we've raised on our Indiegogo from a distributor that I don't want to announce yet, but that's guaranteed to buy the movie from us for a fixed amount of money that will double our Indiegogo as soon as we deliver it. So we've got our Indiegogo for our base production money, and we've already got a guaranteed money on delivery.
Nice.
So the Darbie movie already has guaranteed distribution, and my other movie, Blood Bitch Baby, it also has guaranteed distribution. I can't announce it. It's going to be distributed by Culture Shock Releasing, the same company that released my last movie, Debbie Does Demons. And so Culture Shock Releasing, they're on the internet at cultureshockreleasing.com. And you can, lately they've been putting out a lot of Linnea Quigley classics. like Salt of the Party Nerds and Virgin High. So they're famous for putting out 80s sexy classics and also putting out classic horror movies. So they're our distributor. They've already put out 3 of my movies, and they're going to be putting out this new one. They always do a really good job because they always put the movie in a deluxe slipcase. So you got 2 different pieces of cover art. You got the art on the slipcase, and then when you take the case out of the slipcase, the Blu-ray case, it's got completely separate artwork. So it gives the customers. In fact, if anybody has got our Debbie Does Demons a Blu-ray, they'll notice that you actually got 4 different covers from it, because there was separate art on the front and back of the slipcover. And then when you pulled out the Blu-ray case, it was a reversible cover with R-rated art on the front and the X-rated art inside it that you could flip over.
Nice. So what are some interesting perks that are still available for anyone who wants to donate?
Well, we have the basic perks like the Blu-ray perk, the poster perk. We've got the one that we got that people like is the bloody lingerie perk, which Jessa Flux, who's playing Darbie, will autograph some bloody lingerie from the movie that she wears while she's killing her girlfriends. And then we've also got the autograph poster perk, where you get a poster autographed by all the girls in the movie. Then we've got both a cameo perk and a voice cameo perk, so that you can have a little tiny cameo role in the movie for one perk. And then for the other perk, your voice can be in the movie, not your face, but your voice can be in the movie for the voice cameo perk. And then we've got a streaming perk, so that if you don't want to wait for the Blu-ray and you want to see the movie just immediately when it's finished, you can buy the streaming perk or the digital download perk, which lets you stream or download the movie immediately when it's finished and not have to wait for the Blu-ray, which will be down the road a little later.
Okay. So yeah, guys, you still got 14 days. Definitely check that out. Definitely. All right. So I'm Donald. Question. You've been doing the indie filmmaking horror for a long, long time, decades. Has it gotten easier over time? Or
yeah, well, it is easier now because the materials that you work with are so much easier. Because when I started, I made my first movie exactly 50 years ago when I was making these Super 8 short movies, which I would film them with a Super 8 camera, and they didn't have any sound, so they were all silent. And so all of those Super 8 movies I made are all now on Blu-ray in what's called the Donald Farmer Collection Volume 1 and Volume 2, and you can go to YouTube and look at the trailers for those, but they're both released by SRS Video. And then in '86, I started making features that were actually commercially distributed in video stores all over the country and in a lot of foreign countries. And so when I started doing those, the materials you needed to make them were way more difficult than today, because you needed to, back in the mid '80s, most families were getting into owning video cassette recorders so that they could tape movies off TV. And a lot of families were buying these half-inch video cameras to make their home movies, because before the '80s, families made home movies with 8mm or Super 8mm movie cameras. And then the rich families made their home movies with 16mm cameras. Like a lot of celebrities like Jerry Lewis and Tony Curtis that were big into making home movies, they made their movies with 16mm cameras. But most average people used standard 8 and Super 8mm. And that's how it was until the '80s, when video cameras became available for home use. So all these families started getting half-inch video cameras. And so my first movie, we shot a little on it with a half-inch video camera, but we shot most of it with a commercial grade 3/4-inch camera, which back then was super expensive. And so you basically had to find a video production company that owned one of them and get them to shoot your movie for you, which is what I had to do for my first several movies. My first several movies were mainly shot on 3/4-inch commercial grade video. And at the time, these cameras were incredibly expensive. So I would always have to find a video production company that would come in partnership with me and provide production services. And then back in those days, it was very expensive to edit a movie too, because nobody had editing gear in their home. Nobody had laptops with editing software. Like today, everybody's got editing software on their laptop. But back then, if you wanted to edit your footage, it was very expensive. You had to hire a video production studio that had nonlinear editing setups. Nonlinear means you have to edit the movie from the beginning of the movie to the end, from the head of the tape to the end. and put it together that way. And then if you notice a mistake you've made at the 5-minute mark and you've already progressed to the 15-minute mark, you had to undo all your edits to go all the way back to the 5-minute mark to correct your mistake. So it was just a pain in the neck to edit in those days. But nowadays it's easier than ever because everybody's got editing gear on their computer, on their laptop. Everybody, these digital cameras are very accessible and affordable. They give you a picture quality so much superior to any commercial grade camera in the 80s. I mean, the digital cameras of today can beat any commercial grade camera of the 80s. It beats 3/4 inch, it beats 1 inch, it beats Beta SP. I mean, the only thing it doesn't beat is it doesn't beat 16 millimeter and Super 8 millimeter. I mean, and 35 millimeter, which some of the major horror movies of the 80s, like Reanimator, they were shot on 35 millimeter. But most of the cheaper movies, like The Boarding House and The Ripper with Tom Savini, those were shot on commercial grade video, like what I was doing. So, yeah, to make a movie nowadays is more affordable and easier than ever. That's the good thing. The bad thing is that when I was doing this in the 80s, every little town in America had a video store where you could go rent tapes, and there was this huge market to make movies for these video stores. They were my customers, these video stores all over the country and all over the world. Because I don't know if you remember, but back in the 80s, you could drive all around the country and every little town had one or more video stores. You do that today, you don't see any video stores, but every little town has got one or more vape shops or a CBD shop or a tattoo shop, but no video stores. So that video store market that I used to depend on when I made movies has gone away. And so now I'm dealing with distributors that are like what you call boutique labels that specialize to discriminating customers that want physical media because they're not happy with streaming. So it's a smaller market dealing with these people that service. And so as a result, distributors don't pay as much as they did in the 80s. Back in the 80s, you got paid typically way more for a movie because there was more of a demand and more of a market for it. So as the cost of making movies has gone down, the market for the movies has also gone down. So it's a double-edged sword. All in all, I prefer it better the way it was in the 80s when there was a bigger market, and if you made a movie, you got paid more.
Do you think that as a filmmaker, I mean, who's been, in the game for decades, do you think now that it's so easy for anybody to be a filmmaker, do you think that it is, how can I say this, the quality of films that are being made aren't as great?
Well, I think the quality is still, I mean, the ones I watch are still incredibly high quality because the editing software now, especially if you get custom editing software, that's not just the one that comes on your laptop, but more advanced editing software, it allows you to do the type of sophisticated assembly of your film with the effects that wasn't possible when you're dealing with these old-fashioned video studios in the 80s. So a lot of the movies I'm seeing these days are just super impressive. I mean, I have a friend that lives in the Canary Islands off the coast of Africa, and the Canary Islands is famous for being the place where Hammer made 1 Million Years BC with Raquel Welch. And so he and his friends just made a movie in the Canary Islands, and they told me they made it for just a couple of $1,000s, and he showed it to me, and it looked amazing. It looked like a $500,000 movie, and I was asking him how did he make it look so expensive on his tiny budget, and he said it was all in his editing gear. He used really sophisticated editing gear that had all the filters and everything to take his footage and make his footage look way more elaborate than it was.
I mean, I should say not the look, but the quality, the story, the now. I mean, when it comes to streaming services like Tubi and Plex, anybody, I can go and grab my cell phone and make a movie, send it off to the Film Hub, and it could be up there in a couple of days. Do you think?
Oh yeah, well, there's more movies available now than ever before, but there's always the ones that are at the top of the heap, and it's pretty easy to find the ones that are the most interesting because everybody's got the trailer for their movie on YouTube. So if you have any question about a movie, all you have to do is go through YouTube and watch all the trailers, and you can pretty quickly see which movies look interesting to you and which ones look like the better ones. The that's the beauty of having all these trailers so accessible now. Because when I was starting out in the 80s, there was no YouTube where you could look at trailers. And so when you saw these movies in the video store back then that you'd never heard of before, you had no way of checking it out before you rented it, because there was no way to see the trailer unless you rented another movie, and that movie had the trailer for this other movie you wanted to see at the head of the trailer. Sometimes you could find that, but in most cases you had to rent these movies or buy them blind, with not having any way to check out any of the footage or any of the scenes beforehand. But today we're living in times where everything can be checked out before you make the commitment to either rent it. If you're dealing with a streaming site that charges a fee to watch a movie, it's very easy to watch the trailer before you make that financial commitment. Or if you're thinking of buying the thing on physical media, on Blu-ray or DVD, it's very easy to check out the trailer before you do that. So the age of buying these items blind is over. Now everybody has access on their phone to go to YouTube or go to Vimeo and look at the trailer and see if you're interested in watching further and seeing the full feature after you've watched the trailer. So, the age of consumer protection is better than ever. And, the consumers don't have to be buying in the dark anymore and having to just be renting a movie based on the poster alone, because posters, sometimes represent the movie and sometimes they don't. So yes. You can't always go by the poster.
Yes, I actually interviewed a guy who does the movie posters, and we were actually the covers, and I was talking about, and back in the 80s, like all you had to go off of what the cover was, and you're like, this is an amazing cover, and then you put that movie in, and it had nothing to do with what was on the cover, and you're like, oh crap. It was almost like back then, like the better the cover was, the more likely the movie wouldn't be that great.
Yeah, so whenever I'm online and I see a poster that looks really incredible, the first thing I do is I go over to YouTube, I watch the trailer and see if the trailer measures up to the poster. In 5 minutes, you can find out if the movie's going to measure up to the poster.
Mm-hmm. Now, question, you've been doing this for a long time. What keeps you motivated to keep making movies?
It's all about having people that you want to work with and having a dependable talent pool. I've gone through several groups. I try to use the same actors as much as possible once I find actors that I like. But, I couldn't do that with my first couple of movies, because my first movie was shot in Miami, and then I immediately moved to California. So even though I liked my actors in Miami, I could never use them again, because after that, I never lived in South Florida again. And then when I did my movie in California, I liked a lot of those actors there and would like to have worked with them again. But then I immediately moved from there to Tennessee, and so I was no longer living where I could use those actors again. But once I got to Tennessee, I sort of got settled, and then I've started using the same actors movie after movie, as long as they're available, as long as they're affordable. I mean, I do have some actors that become so successful after they work with me that they basically become too expensive and I can't afford them anymore. Mm-hmm. But that's a good thing. I always love to see my actors become super successful. In fact, I was just watching this new Will Ferrell movie, Strays, last week, about the talking dogs.
Yeah.
With Will Ferrell and Jamie Foxx. Mm-hmm. And I looked in the credits at the end of the movie, and in the credits was the name of an actress, Andrea Lang, who's in my movie Chainsaw Cheerleaders. And so I think that's incredible. Andrea's now gone from my movie, which was her very first movie, to working on a big nationally distributed movie called Strays, which is in basically every theater, every multiplex in the country is playing it. And that's not her first big movie. She also was in a Clint Eastwood movie a couple of years ago, and she had a couple of lines of dialogue in a Clint Eastwood movie. So she's not got big parts, but she does have speaking parts in these movies. And now her biggest project is coming out pretty soon. I think she just did a Netflix movie with her and Chris Evans, the guy from Captain America from the Avengers. So her working on a Chris Evans movie, that's really huge. So, and I looked at the credits list, and her name is pretty high up in the cast, so it looks like she has a bigger role in that one. So I'm really excited to see Andrea in a Chris Evans movie.
Yes, that's amazing. That is amazing. All right.
And then when I did Cannibal Hookers, my male lead, Matt Borlagini, he went straight from my movie, which was his first movie, straight into Nightmare on Elm Street 5. So he's another one of our success stories.
So I got an off-the-wall question to ask you. Has there ever been a movie idea for you that you thought of, you came up with, and you were like, "This sounds good," and then you thought about it, you're like, "Yeah, I can't put this out there. I don't think the world is ready for this."
No, I've never thought of any viable idea that I thought I wouldn't do because it would be offensive or controversial. That would never shy me away. I have come up with ideas for movies, and then I would announce them on a forum and say, "This is the movie I plan to do soon." And then that turned out to be a big mistake announcing it. I did that once where I announced on a forum that I wanted to do a movie called Stripper Ripper, and then sure enough, before I could get around and doing it, somebody else did a movie and they called their movie The Stripper Ripper. So so I don't know if they saw me posting that on the forum or just great minds think alike, but still,
Yeah,
it's made me realize it's probably not a good idea to announce your title if you're not planning to shoot it immediately, because there's a whole world out there that's looking for hot titles to pounce on.
I agree. I agree. Well, where can everyone find you on social media?
Well, I'm on all the social media. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, I'm on Instagram, and I'm also on the new place Threads. So I'm on all four.
Awesome. And the Indiegogo for on Darbie's house got 14 days left. There's quite a few awesome perks. So definitely check that out. And
Yeah, all they
Wilson,
have to do is they just have to go to Indiegogo.com and then type in Darbie Screamhouse in the search window, and it'll take them right to our campaign.
right straight to it. And a release date for both of these movies, are we looking at late this year or early next year?
Oh no, we're shooting them this year, but this year is going to be over in a few months.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're looking at these movies being released by summer or fall of 2024.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I would love to have you back on the show once they're released, and we can definitely talk about them. It's been an absolute pleasure.
All right. Well, I appreciate you inviting me on, and thanks a lot.
Thank you, my friend. And everyone, thank you for coming to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce. See you guys next time.